How's it going, guys? We have another exciting video today, and we're actually going to step away from the theories until the next episode of The Acolyte, as we have explored essentially as many avenues as we can. We so appreciate your guys' support on these. We realize that you guys might always agree with us, but of course, that's the fun thing about theories, is all of us have a lot to bring to the table, all of us being big Star Wars fans. So we appreciate you guys. We love getting to engage with you guys in the comment section. But today we're doing something completely different. I actually wanted to break down Attack of the Clones, because just like many things in Star Wars, of course, there's lots of critics, as all of you know. But one of the things that the prequel series gets hate for is actually Attack of the Clones. And many of you have heard this, of course, that the biggest complaint with Attack of the Clones isn't the action or even the plotline. It is the dialogue. Everyone always complains how cringe Anakin Skywalker is in Attack of the Clones. And of course, we get it. He says some really crazy, awkward things. He has numerous conversations with Padme throughout the movie, and those are essentially all the conversations that are awkward. So I'm going to bring a few to the table, and I want you guys to evaluate what exactly George Lucas was attempting to do with Anakin in that movie. I realize many of you do think a lot of the things that he said was awkward and just terrible writing, but I'm actually going to make the argument to you and the case to you that Attack of the Clones was brilliant. It actually perfectly encompasses George Lucas's idea of Anakin, because it truly sets up his fall to the dark side. And I would argue that Attack of the Clones is the most important movie in the entire franchise. So without further ado, let's break it down. Number one, the first awkward dialogue we get from Anakin is when he finally meets Padme again. All of you guys know the scene where Padme tells Anakin that, boy, Anakin, you sure have grown. And of course, you guys remember the awkward dialogue between Anakin and Padme there, where Anakin replies, "You've grown too. I mean, more beautiful as a senator, you know." Anyway, he's just nervous. That makes sense. But it's the scene after this where he's complaining to Obi-Wan, and Anakin is complaining how difficult Obi-Wan is, and he just doesn't understand him. And him and Padme have this really awkward romantic / sexual tension kind of moment where it is clearly not mutual, where Padme tells Anakin not to grow up too fast, and Anakin responds, "But I am grown up. You said it yourself." And he stares at her really creepily, like really creepy. And I know that all of you know what I'm talking about. And she says, "Man, that makes me really uncomfortable." So anyway, people are just like, why would George Lucas do this? Why would he make it so awkward? Okay, so before we answer that question, that's just the first line. I don't want to answer that question quite yet, because it's all going to make sense when you put it in its entire context of the movie. Of course, Anakin continues to have awkward conversations with Padme. We're not going to break all of them down. It would take forever. The next one of the infamous conversations, it's when Anakin and Padme are traveling in public transportation. They're having this conversation. Anakin is explaining to Padme that Jedi are actually encouraged to love, after she makes this comment that, I thought Jedis weren't supposed to fall in love. And Anakin makes this case, and at the end says, "So you might say that we're even encouraged to love." And of course, Padme replies back something along the lines of, "Wow, you sure have matured." Anakin creepily responds, "You haven't changed a bit. You're just like I remember you in my dreams." And you're just like, yikes, dude. That is freaking creepy and awkward. What in the world is wrong with you, dude? Like, what are you doing? So we have that. I want to bring up the next point. This is the most infamous line, perhaps, in the entire prequel series. Anakin and Padme are having this romantic / kind of typical conversation. Little bit of romantic interest, at least from Anakin's side. Anakin starts awkwardly rubbing Padme's skin, saying that, her skin is smooth, and of course uses an analogy of how smooth her skin is. Basically compares Padme's smooth skin to sand, in which he says, "I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere." And everyone's just like, man, why would you say that? It's just so weird. So Anyway, let's break all of this down because everybody over the years has gotten on George Lucas's case. They're like, he should have hired a writer. Why in the world would he not have hired a writer? This is common sense. So let's break down a few reasons why George Lucas chose these lines. And he majorly hints at a lot of this stuff. I'm not making this up. Let's break down number one, who Anakin Skywalker is. Anakin grew up sheltered in the Jedi Order. We assume not really talking to many females. So of course, that's going to be one factor. Second thing is, he has this incredibly unhealthy attachment for Padme. If you recall the opening scene in which Obi-Wan and Anakin appear, he's sweating bullets because he's like, Master, I haven't seen her in 10 years. I'm so nervous. You know, so he has this unhealthy obsession with her that we can clearly see at the beginning. And as it goes along, it continues to get more and more obsessive and more controlling. And that is particularly seen in the fireplace scene where him and Padme are talking about their feelings for each other, and he awkwardly tells Padme about the kiss that she never should have given him, and you were in my very soul, and you're just like, dude, what is your problem? You have to understand here, guys, this is the foreshadowing of Darth Vader. This obsessive, compulsive attachment that he has to Padme is what ultimately leads him down the dark side. George Lucas is showing you how secretly obsessive, unhealthy, controlling, overly protective, and jealous Anakin is. All of these things feed into him going to the dark side. And Palpatine knows this. Palpatine plays on this in Revenge of the Sith. He actually knows Anakin's feelings perhaps even better than Anakin through the dark side of the Force. And he is manipulating this weakness of Anakin that the Jedi somehow are blind to, with really the exception of Obi-Wan, as we get a hint in the Clone Wars that he's a little suspicious, at least in the last few seasons. But George Lucas is showing us just how unhealthy it is to have an unhealthy level of attachment to someone. Of course, that's been the argument throughout Star Wars. It's like, well, Jedi should be able to have attachments. They should be able to love. And a lot of people would probably agree that the Jedi didn't approach attachments correctly. But it's probably because of Anakin Skywalker. Maybe there were other events like him before, but his attachments are unhealthy and they are destructive. And they come out in his dialogue. It was 100% purposeful of Lucas to make it awkward and uncomfortable because that's just who Anakin is. He's got no social skills. He's a sociopath, and he has a complete unhealthy obsession for Padme. Now, the third thing, we need to address the sand line because this is the other part that people don't like to engage with. That is one of the most important lines in the entire prequel series. It might be the most important line. It is said in the Star Wars comics that sand actually causes Darth Vader to have flashbacks. Essentially, he has PTSD. When he feels or sees or talks about sand, he actually is reminded of his time as a slave, and he is reminded of when the Tusken Raiders tortured and killed his mother. This is actually, in canon, the reason Darth Vader does not go down to search for the missing Death Star plans on Tatooine, and he sends a search team. He actually would have done it himself had it not been for his experience with sand, but he was unwilling to do so. And this shapes and changes the entire course of the series. Had Darth Vader gone down there, A New Hope does not have any hope. The rebellion probably loses. So now you see why that sand line ends up actually playing perhaps the biggest role in the entire series. So even though it's awkward, you have to understand it is important, it is awkward, but it's supposed to be awkward because he has no communication skills with females. And with Padme, he doesn't really know how to express his feelings in a non-creepy way. It's very much like you and your friend are pursuing the same person. You're both trying to date this particular girl, and you and him both say the exact same thing, but it comes off as super attractive from one of you and super creepy from the other. Why? because it is from the perception of the female if she likes you. And this is what we're dealing with Padme. These people are just like, but Padme is smart. She's a politician. She was royalty. Well, this goes into the idea that George Lucas does not like politicians. He has continually throughout the series, typically through Obi-Wan, talked about how politicians cannot be trusted. And it's no secret that in real life, George Lucas isn't exactly Mr. Political, tends to stay out of politics. Of course, he has some opinions, but by and large doesn't trust politicians. And that comes out in this series, is he is actually dogging politicians. And that is another reason why he has Padme falling for Anakin. It's just another politician making a stupid decision. And let's be real, guys, she did make a stupid decision. She witnessed the after effect of Anakin slaughtering an entire group, perhaps even village of Tusken Raiders, and still stays with him. So let me know what you guys think about this. This is actually why I think the writing for Attack of the Clones is brilliant from George Lucas. He actually makes Attack of the Clones, in my opinion, the most well-written and thought-out movie of the prequel series. It is actually impressive when you break down what George Lucas is communicating with Anakin and his fall to the dark side, and at the same time, the failure of politicians. Let me know what you guys think. I realize we might get some hate for this. That's okay. I want the pushback. I would love to hear your guys' opinions if you disagree. We welcome that here at the Coruscant Courier. Just don't be toxic. Just be honest. So anyway, guys, have a blessed one. Thank you so much for all the support you guys are giving us. Our last video on Darth Plagueis and Lamaya has been so well engaged by you guys. You guys are amazing. Continue to like, subscribe, comment. We love you guys. We love Star Wars. May the Force be with you. Always.